Hello everyone, I'm Ann Dale here at my sewing room in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Today I'd like to bring to you the Kimberbell Digital Dealer exclusive month 7 for 2024. It's a very cute little pin cushion. Look at that, isn't that adorable? So we're going to talk briefly about the supply list, what you're going to need for this project for this month, things I want to let you know about. If this is your first time joining us, there are 6 other months and a bonus project called What's the Buzz Key Bob? It's cute as all get out. This one will come to you if you sign up for the whole year. You'll get a bonus design, so, baker's dozen, you'll get 13. The bonus design is at no charge, of course. If you aren't enamored of the entire 12 months, if you pick at least 8 of the year, you will also qualify for the bonus design. Of course, if you do sign up for the whole year, it's at a nice little discount. So do check that out on our website, www.mysewingroom.ca, and let's take a look at that supply list, shall we? This project is a 5x7 hoop. We're going to need a couple of fabrics for the petals. This time I chose a bright yellow and that little peach floral. This one was coral and the peach floral. I thought I might try a little yellow flower this time. So you'll need 2 fabrics there if you like the alternating petals. Then we'll need the actual pin cushion part, which is the bottom here. I chose sort of a grassy green. And then a little bit of something for the center. I have one of the Kimberbell plaids. So I decided to repeat that here. Then we'll also need a bit of water-soluble topping. There's several out there on the market. We'll put links in with the video on the ones that I've used specifically. Then we're going to need a couple pieces of light mesh cutaway stabilizer. And the project also calls for a medium cutaway. I've tested with this first one, and I decided that it did work nicely for 2 pieces of light mesh. So I have 2 light mesh instead of a light mesh and a medium heavy cutaway stabilizer. You do what works for you, what you might have in your sewing room. The other thing that you might find handy, some of the Kimberbell paper tape. You're going to need some Fiberfill, maybe not a bag as large as this one, but this one's lovely. It's really nice and puffy and squishy, easy to use. You'll find the link below the video. You might also enjoy the Kimberbell Tool Set. There's lots of places you'll find those handy. Embroidery cutting. Little bit to get your pieces prepped and ready. We're also going to find a pair of pinking shears, valuable in this project, and most likely a few pins. So I am going to put in the first 5x7 hooping of stabilizer into the embroidery machine. I already have my design loaded. I'll meet you over there for more details. So the first hooping in Kimberbell's instructions calls for a medium cutaway. As I said, I have a light mesh cutaway. In the bottom, I have just a nice pre-wound. You'll find the link for that in our class information. And we're going to load part A. There's 2 files for this project. One has sort of scallops on it, that's part A. The other's the base. So we're gonna start first with the color number 1. And what I've done is I have loaded in the yellow that I'm gonna use. That's about the only color we need at the end of the day. And I've put a cream instead of a white bobbin in just to tone in better with the yellow. The first color stitch is just a placement line, so let's go ahead with that. All right, so color step number 1, let's place a lovely little square into our hoop so that we can see where to place our 2 pieces of flower fabric. Doesn't matter which color's top side. All the fabric cutting directions are included for you to pre-cut all your sizes. Make yourself a embroidery kit. So once I'm happy with the placement of the fabric, I'm just going to put a little bit of tape up here at the top just to keep things from shifting. I'll put another down here at the bottom of the hoop, but the hoop is off of the base of the machine, so no heavy pressing. Only press heavy when you're on a firm surface. And then color step number 2, it just asks you to use a visible color. I've got that yellow in there. I should be able to see that on the coral. Alrighty, so color step number 3 is a petals tack down line. The first one will be our cutting line. Same color thread I'm going to carry on. If it would help you, you might want to change color just to help differentiate between the lines. Alrighty, so that first stitch out goes pretty quickly, and there's only 3 little stitch outs on our fabric. Meet me at the cutting table. Okay, here we are with our first hooping. We're just going to pop this right out of the hoop. Need a little bit of trimming. First line here, right through the middle. There's a nice straight line stitch there. Separates the top from the bottom. I can just use my rotary cutter there. Then I might need to take a little more care. I've got these sort of little, I think that's how it's easiest to see, sort of these little light bulb shapes. We're going to cut each one of them out individually. On the original lighter line, the heavier line is the sewn line, so whatever works for you. Small scissors, large scissors, even the rotary cutter. I think I'm just going to, I'm going to trim these with my pinking shears actually. So what I'm going to do right for the moment is trim away the biggest amount of bulk. Then I'm just going to separate these from each other, just very carefully. They're sewn together and they actually are touching. So I don't want to cut into the actual piece. Just going to separate them. Nothing super fancy here, just gonna remove some of the bulk. Here we have a small assortment of petals. Just going to grab my pinking shears. When you've got little round bits like this, our traditional way of clipping into the curves can be managed quite nicely with this set of pinking shears. We're going to get pretty close to that original stitching line without cutting into it. And then the pinking shears will have done a fabulous job of clipping. If you happen to have a moment and you snip into that stitching, you can repair with your sewing machine. Now, we're just going to turn all of these little guys out on themselves. And I feel that there's enough body in them with the mesh stabilizer that I didn't really need a medium weight, but it would just be for body here. So analyze which stabilizer you have. See if you feel that there's enough body in there for these petals. Alrighty, so just grabbed myself my little pokey pushy pointy turning tool here. It's just got a lovely round end here and a finer round end here. I'm going to use the heaviest one. What I'm going to try to do here, just going to open the little flower petal. There's probably a million ways in the world to turn this, but I just need to get a little start there. And I'm going to just use the end of my little pokey pushy turner and my tummy, which is off camera, to push that little bit out there. And then I'm going to use that nice big round ball. And I'm just going to sweep the curve with it to create that nice round petal. And then kind of give that a little pop there to get that little neck that we had there for the sort of that funny little light bulb shape. When you have a curve like this, it's easier to go and just kind of sweep it around, and you want something soft, round, dull, something that's not going to poke through. Then I'm just going to set that to the side, and I'm going to carry through, pop that open a little bit. Could work top to bottom here on the mat instead of my tummy, but we're just gonna turn them around. Just be gentle, don't be too tough. Patience is a virtue. Alrighty. We've got all of our little pieces turned. Our next step will be to press them. Just gonna bring in my little press mat. We want 4 of them to be peach, 4 of them to be yellow. Alrighty. So if they're not as round as they need to be, just grab your tool, give them a little bit more work. So if you find that maybe your stabilizer was a bad choice, you could beef the body of your petals up with a little bit of starch. I'm happy with the body that they have and the weight that they have, so I won't use starch. However, if you're having a hard time getting a good press, another product here, Flatter. It doesn't starch or stiffen, but it does relax fibers, and if you dampen things just a wee bit, it's a little easier to get a crisper press in there. Beautiful. That one to it. There we go. So I have 4 lovely peach. Then I'm going to encourage my yellow ones a little bit with a little spritz of Flatter. I find pressing from the color side that you're working with help you see that the other color is well hidden. Again, if you have an edge that's not quite as round as it could be, encourage the curve with the tool. And just iron them dry. If you need to, you can clap them. You can put the clapper on, go off and do something else. When you come back, they're going to be as lovely as they can be. Alrighty, so that's the end of the first part and the hooping. Second part, another 5x7 hoop. Another mesh cutaway. All the pieces you haven't used yet, you will need. One of the pieces of stabilizer, it's usually referred to as a stabilizer, but we need a foam. Kimberbell refers to this as a flexi foam. It's known under several trade names, but a foamy bit, it's going to give us a little extra 3D poof in the middle there. Okay, so everything's prepped and ready. I'll meet you over at the sewing machine. I'm going to take all the pieces I haven't used yet with me. Same cream color bobbin, same gold thread on top for the moment. We've got our design in and ready to go. Part B of the embroidery file, which is an octagon. And color step number 1, placement line. Placement line, then we're going to put the green fabric in, center it left, right, top, bottom. There we go. A couple wee pieces of tape might be in order, just so it doesn't shift while we're stitching it. Remember, only press firmly if you've got a firm base underneath, and away we go. Color step number 2. Stitch color step number 3, another placement line. Now we're going to bring in our 8 petals. I'm going to release the hoop from the machine. I am going to work right here on the bed of the machine. We're going to alternate these petals. We're going to put peach one down, a yellow one down. Peach. I think that one might have been pressed as a yellow. It was. So let's just alternate. Lay them in place just quickly. There we go. And what we're going to do is just line them up. Kimberbell has a great picture for you to see. You're going to use a few bits of tape here, but I'm just going to spread these out just a wee bit. So that inner placement line, we're going to take the end of the petal and attach it. Just bump it right up there. Center the other one, bump it up there. Center this one. Center that one. Center. Bump it right up on that line, but center them between the points. Okay. Once we've got them all centered and laid down, we'll grab the tape. You can tape over several at a time. Remember, you can press fiercely if you're on something firm. Give it one last eyeball. A bit of tape up on that one. This one. All the little loose edges here. And I'm going to reattach to the machine, and I'm going to color step number 4, which is a tack down. So color step number 4, tack all the petals down. Our next step here will be to go in and remove the tape. Now it tends to tear pretty easily once it's been stitched through, so just I need to just get it started. And if you get a little piece and you can't get it out, I've grabbed the Kimberbell tweezers here. Give you a little wider view. I usually protect the stitching, tear towards the stitching. Mostly did pretty good there. One of them shifted a wee bit, but I don't think it's going to be catastrophic to the finished product, so I'm not going to move it. Alright, so I'll lay that back in. Okay, so we're going to just grab that water-soluble topping from earlier. We're going to just lay that in here. Also going to just lift this piece of tape up here. I'm going to repurpose it. All right. So we're going to just tape that water-soluble in place. Color step number 5 is a center base placement line. Still using yellow. Okay, next step is just to slip in here and remove the topping out of the middle, just the middle. Usually tearing towards the stitches will get that out of place for you, nice and easy. Then our next step will be to add a flexi foam. I'm going to repurpose the tape again. Make sure that doesn't slip while we're stitching. Tack it down wherever you think it needs to be, where you think it needs to be, just to hold it in place. And then color step number 6, still yellow. It's going to stitch down the foam for us. All right, next step here, we're going to remove all that tape. And what we're going to do is now trim away the excess on that foam. That's a nice place for the Kimberbell applique scissors. And we're going to use that Aquamesh wash away topping, Stitch 2.0, all sorts of names for it. We're just going to put the duck bill up on the stable foamy middle. Its job is to protect the applique, and in this case that would be the center part of the foam. So just carefully trim around, close to the stitching but not into the stitching when at all possible. If you happen to nick it, don't panic. There we go. Could use a little tidy right there. There we go. You know, we'll all find our favorite scissors for these little jobs. Okay. To reattach to the embroidery machine. Next step is to add that center fabric. I'm going to just reposition my tape on top here. Giving the end of it a circle. As long as we've got coverage all the way around, not too fussy about whether that fabric in is straight or not. Okay, color step number 7. It's going to be a tack down of the center here, still yellow. Don't recommend putting your fingers in the hoop, but knowing we were going to stitch up there, this little tail was kind of jumping, so I just tack the corner down, nowhere near the stitching. Okay, so next step, I'm going to release the hoop. And then I'm going to pop in this time. The tape and the excess center fabric. Fabric is usually a little easier than the foam. Topping, or the wash away, is protecting the petals a bit from the scissors, so that's a lovely thing. It'd be awful just to go in and accidentally cut a petal off right now, wouldn't it? Just slow and steady, take your time. Close to the stitches, but not into the stitches. That's what we're aiming for. If you see any little bits that need trimming, now's the time. Pop that back into the machine. Color step number 9. I may have skipped a step, I often do. There was maybe a placement and a tack down line. And I may have skipped placement line. Let's put it in there for fun. Color step number 8. You'll see it's going to just give a heavier stitch. There we go. That would have been the tack down. I had stitched the placement line as the tack down because I knew right where that circle was going. Anyway, color step number 9 is satin stitch. And if you hadn't put the final color in, now would be the time. I am going with the yellow. I'm going to stop this here. If this is one of your first time stitching an applique, the stitches that would just stitch down and went around, if you saw messy edges sticking out past that, then you might want to go in and trim them now, otherwise they're going to make fuzzy later. Mine are all just inside the circle, so I'm pretty happy about my trimming, but if you're seeing what might turn out to be fuzzy edges after, you might want to trim those now. Alrighty, before we go to color step number 10, we have a little bit of housekeeping to do. Just going to release the hoop here. And what we're going to do is remove all the tape and tear away that topping. Comes pretty clean. Then our next fun job here will be to tape all those flower petals out of the way. What we're going to do, we're just going to fold those petals into the middle here. Now I know the next step will stitch over the edge of that tape there, so I might actually just trim it off so I don't have to pull it out later. And hold that. Where am I going to put my tape? So here we go. Pull all those little pieces up to the middle. Now this looks like one of those lovely little desserts. Where typically inside is some warm apple cinnamon. Just going to trim that tape inside of the stitching line. As I can see the stitching line here, and just made sure that the tape is just to the inside of that. We just want all of those petals safely to the middle for the next step. Next step is to add our other piece of green. And we'll probably benefit from some tape. The nice thing about the tape is if you stitch through it, just tear out of it. Easily. Top and bottom I've got there pressing firmly. And maybe a couple bits on the side too, just in case. Be a crying shame for stuff to lift off now. Typically what happens is it gets caught under the foot, makes a terrible little mess. And the final step, color step number 10, still yellow. So some of you might have caught that we didn't go near the end up there. That's going to be the opening. So our next steps all take place outside the hoop. Join me at the cutting table. First things first, we'll remove the tape, save it for later if it's still sticky. If it's not, it's done its job. Surf that out. All right, so here we have removed the tape. We'll take the project out of the hoop. And we have a little bit of a pressing job next. I'm just going to bring my ironing mat in here. So up here on the corner, maybe you can see it pretty well in the camera here. You can see under there, got those two lines from way on early. Those are important to us now. What we're going to do is fold back this fabric to that line, because that's where the seam should be, roughly. So we're just going to make this line match this line. And what we're going to do, we'll just bring the iron in and just give that a gentle crease. If your iron is too hot and you're melting your stabilizer, you might want to reconsider the temperature. And don't move anything till it's cool. And the clapper helps pull the heat out and set the crease really tight in there. If you move it now, it could get kind of smushy, and it's not as lovely as where you just pressed it. So our next press line is the angle on the other side. So we're just going to roll that fabric back to just where we can kind of see that line there. And let's give it a little bit of heat for a minute. Remember, the clapper will remove the heat quickly, less waiting time, but we should wait till it's cool. There we go. So what we are able to see is those final lines there. And what we're going to do is we're going to trim all the excess out here. And I'm just going to make sure that this doesn't get caught. I'm just going to throw a bit of tape there to keep that from jumping out. And then from the back side, we can see that line, and that's where we're going to cut the item out. I'm going to grab my larger scissors. These are 8-inch French European scissors. They are amazingly sharp and beautiful to use. So just gonna slide in here. And I'm just going to trim to the outside of that edge there in case this fabric frays a lot. That little stitch will hold it for us. You can see it's leaving a 1/4 inch roughly. But I'm cutting right next to it. This here. I realized that I actually pressed a little too far out. That tape from the inside, it's now in my iron way. There we go. Back on track. It's actually just in. You see the, oops, that original stitch line is a little hard to see on the white, but can see it quite clearly here, and about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that's our edge there, and this edge is just inside of that 1/4 inch seam allowance. There we go. Better too big than too small. Just gonna fuss up my ironing just a little bit. Let it cool. I'm also going to grab some stuffing, needle and thread to finish. All right, so this extra bit here, I'm going to leave it a little longer than a 1/4 inch. I can see the crease lines there. I can see that point there. I'm going to leave it maybe about 3/8 just in case I need it. I'm holding this back out of the way. And there we go. And then you can see. And we're going to just gently reach in here, go all the way to the other side. And I like to put my thumb in there. I like to fold the seam allowance over in the direction it's meant to. I'm going to grab the other seam allowance, fold it back, and just turn those points. Okay, then we're going to just pop everything to the outside. Remove that last bit of tape. We can use our little pokey pushy tool. Just run it along the seam. Encourage it all the way to the outside. There we go. Now, this side, the top side, we need to fold that seam allowance over to match what was stitched under earlier. Once you're happy with where it is, just sneak in there with the iron, give it a little crease over. The other side. Just makes it a little easier when we get to sewing. That edge together. Again, it's always easier for things to cool. Get a much better crisp edge if you can just be a little bit patient, wait for it. The clapper sets that seam, removes the heat much sooner. Now you can see I've got two sides that will need to be stitched closed later. Meanwhile, I'm going to grab myself a fistful of that stuffing. That might be a bit much. It's kind of a nice fistful, will fit in there. Just kind of put that in there. I like to work it into the corners with my fingers. You can also use the pokey pushy tool to kind of just encourage the stuffing into the corners. And then how full, well, that's a bit up to you. I'm going to put just a wee bit more in there. Kind of big walnut, small plum, or maybe a little smaller. Just kind of. I'm going to push that piece in and push it way in, away from this edge. Then I'm just going to fold everything back here. I'm going to find my point on both sides. Couple tips there. If you're having a struggle with your fingers, you can glue those points in, pin them in. I'm going to match the pin point first, and then I'm just going to toss a little pin in there. Just to hold it, which will let me work the other straight side here. I'm going to pin about 1/8 of an inch away from that fold. And I'm going to work on the other side here. Get that all tucked in, folded down. Having those lines pressed in there nicely from earlier is quite helpful at this point. Just going to match those together. Pin about 1/8 of an inch from that fold. It's going to work nicely for my next step. There we go. There we go. So the first pin was the point, then I've got one on that side and one on that side. That's about all we need. Then I'm going to grab a needle and thread. I'm actually going to use white here. Hopefully you can see it. If not, I have a sort of a larger video to show you this stitch. I stitch right to left. Some people don't. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sneak in here, go down inside, and then come up at that first part of the opening, hiding the knot sort of deep inside. Now this is a ladder stitch. So right now I'm on the top side. I'm going to just reach across to the bottom side. And what I've got here is 2 folds together. And I'm going to take a stitch right across from that first one. And I'm just going to travel in the fold. There we go. So from the top to the bottom and along the fold. Now I'm going to go from the bottom to the top, traveling along the fold. You hopefully can take little tiny stitches, and if you can't, when I was young I really couldn't. I couldn't quite make it. So I would actually take bigger stitches, about 1/4 inch, and I would go 1/4 inch all the way across this way, and then I would stagger and go 1/4 inch back this way, but staggered like a bricklayer. So in the end, I had stitches that were 1/8 of an inch apart, but I had to stitch everything twice to manage those little stitches. And I don't mind to this day doing it. I did manage over the years to come up with smaller stitches, but you know, needs must. So I'm actually going to do what I used to do. Try not to pull too hard because you can pucker that seam. I'm going to try to do a magnified video for you, and we'll grab that, put it in the digital dealer exclusive files for those of you who've registered for the program. You'll be able to access easy links there. The rest of you, please check into our YouTube channel. Look for all of our great tips and tutorials and other classes there. And remember, if you can't do big stitches or little stitches, do big ones and then travel back through them later. You travel along the fold. I can remove that pin, that's side stitched. I can actually remove that pin too because I've got it pinched nicely in my fingers. And travel in the top through the fold, left to right or right to left, whichever direction you prefer to sew, or whether you're righty or lefty handed. I just like to keep those two folds top facing. So I'm taking roughly 1/4 inch stitches because I know that I want 1/8 inch stitches, but I'm going to do an offset all the way back. So once I get to the end here, I'm going to turn around and start stitching back the other direction. And I'll do a high contrast, very close-up video. This is also the stitch that I use to put my hand-sewn bindings on quilts. And it's also the stitch I use to close stuffed animals. It's a very nicely hidden stitch when you're done. So I have quite a dark green, and I'm using a white thread, and it's very difficult to see the stitches. And as you go along and you tighten down, don't pull too hard because it will wrinkle up. Okay, I'm at the end, but remember I did 1/4 inch stitches this way, and I'm gonna slip back in here and do 1/8 inch stitches in between, or well, actually offset 1/4 inch stitches on the way back. Because not all of us have mastered teeny tiny stitches. Just got to rethread my needle. I'm using only one strand, but I am using a polyester thread here. Quite strong. So I'm going to travel back. I would recommend a thread that matches. Especially those of you who aren't fans of hand stitching. The other thing you could do is you could mush this down into the machine and do a top stitch all the way around. You'll have to wrestle with the bulk a little bit, but I think it would be manageable. Because some people, when it comes to hand stitching, if there's hand stitching involved, they are out. They don't want to make the project. And I hear you. I don't mind a little bit of hand stitching myself, but there you go. So this part might take longer than either of the hoopings did. But I do want to complete this. Okay, to finish off, I'm just going to slide my needle under the spot that's already sewn. And just in the seam allowance here, I'm going to take a little tiny back stitch, another stitch, and I'm just in the seam allowance there where I can hide these stitches another little back stitch. And I took a couple little tiny stitches at the end of the hole there. And then I'm just going to pull that down, and I'm going to pull just a little harder and cut that off, and the tail will slip back in. There we go. And so this is a bit empty because of how I push the stuffing, so I'm just going to massage it over. And there we go. Two of the cutest darn little pincushions. Fabulous. So if you're enjoying these, please do like our videos, share them with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel so that you will be notified as the new ones get uploaded. Again, thank you for joining me and here at my sewing room. Please do like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.